What was life like on a ship in the early 18th century?
It was not easy. Ships were small, they were very cramped, people living in very close quarters. Sanitation, not always the best. Human waste was usually just in buckets dumped over the side of the ship. Sometimes certain portholes were made for it. But again, you're going to have a lot of smells. It's very hot, especially below deck.
Mm.
And a lot of people, a lot of sailors were malnourished, and even pirates generally fared better in terms of their diet because whenever they would rob a ship, about 50% of all the goods they were managed to steal, they would keep for themselves in terms of food and things to repair their ship. So pirates had better conditions in general
Mm.
because of this. But disease was rampant. Injury was a huge problem. So there was a lot of most deaths at sea was due to injury and infection.
Mm.
So that was always a huge risk. And so it was a very risky business going out at sea. So those who did were people who really genuinely found that calling for it or
Mm.
had no other option whatsoever. So yeah, it was very, very tough. I personally would never want to have to work on a ship. Some people ask, like, wouldn't you love to like be on a pirate ship? And I'm like, no way.
No, no,
No. So it
no.
was pretty tough. Pirate ships in a lot of ways were better because they were more egalitarian. They had very strict rules, known as the Articles, or what we call the Pirate Code. That was very real. And which is actually the subject of my third book coming out later
Mm.
this year, Life on the Pirate Ship, based on the Pirate Code. And they had equal distribution of goods. They could vote in their captain. If there was going to be a punishment, it had to be decided by unanimous vote. Whereas on merchant ships or Royal Navy ships, people did not really have much control, not very much say. They would have wages withheld quite often. So life was better on a pirate ship in that sense. But in general, nasty business.
Mm. Is that what drew people sometimes to become pirates in general, is because they may have served, let's say, in the Royal Navy or something to that effect, and then they see how, quote, good some of these pirates have it because they get to keep certain things and they get to live this life where they're not being ordered around by someone, let's say in London, and they have no idea what's going on in the Caribbean. It's kind of like a detachment from the hierarchy. Does that draw some people into piracy, including Anne and Mary?
Absolutely. That was probably the largest draw for people going into piracy was better conditions and more freedom because the pirates could make these collective decisions, get better pay. They knew the risk going in. The average pirate usually was only a pirate for 2 years, either because they were lucky enough to retire, which was very rare, or because they were captured or because they were killed in battle. But a lot of people still, despite that risk, actively chose piracy for this. A lot of people were forced into piracy, or so they would claim. Most pirates at their trial would claim that they were forced into it, but there were people who were happy to join a pirate ship rather than become held hostage. They were happy to join it for these conditions and various other reasons. But yes, better life than a merchant ship or Royal Navy ship was absolutely probably the main motivator. In
Mhm.
terms of women like Anne Bonny and Mary Read, it's very possible that life on a pirate ship, since they were active participants on the ship and not perhaps kind of held below deck or not allowed to do anything, this would be attractive to women because this would be kind of the one area where they would have complete, like a lot of their own agency, or if not agency, they weren't necessarily tied down into being either working in domestic service or becoming a wife and mother. That was basically the only choices for women. And, or if they were in a different situation, going into prostitution. Um, so women had very few options. A pirate ship did offer a lot more freedom. They were able to
Mhm.
travel, they were able to fight. A lot of working class women were very strong. It's very labor intensive to manage to work a household and do all that heavy work. So working class women were quite suited for the rigors of a pirate ship. So it would offer women a type of freedom that they couldn't get otherwise.
You talk